everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in with us today. I am here with President Steve Standifird to talk a little bit about his first generation experience. So maybe you tuning in today may have not been aware that our university president is a first generation college student. I would first like to start off by introducing myself. My name is Jhoanna Vega-Rocha. I'm the Assistant Director for the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. I'm also a proud Bradley alum, and I graduated in 2017. I've been in this role for a little bit over a year now. So to give you a little background of why we are here today, I am gonna ask President Standifird about his first generation experience, and to also let you know that National First Generation College Student Day is November 8th. November 8th was selected because that's the anniversary of the signing of the Higher Education Act of 1965. So this act was an act that was signed to provide equity for students, similar to the Civil Rights Act, and provided more resources and funding for universities to help first generation students and the students that are the first in their family to go to college. So the definition that Bradley uses as first generation students is a student who's neither their parents or legal guardians hold a four-year degree from a university. So that's the definition we use. So at Bradley, there's approximately 30% of first-generation college students, which is pretty aligned nationally. So there, data from the Department of Education, there's about 24% of students who are the first in their family to go to college. So thank you so much for being here with me today, President Standifird. And we have not been able to meet in person due to how the year has turned out. But if you can tell us a little bit about yourself and how you landed in the role you're on today.
Sure. Given the nature of the topic, I guess I'll start with my academic journey. I'm originally from Southern Indiana, from a town called Evansville, and was always fascinated by science. Still am, love science, one of my passions. And I was always pretty good at math. And so not surprisingly, a lot of encouragement to go into engineering. So probably no surprise, given from Indiana, going into engineering, first generation college student, I ended up at Purdue. I ended up getting a chemical engineering degree from Purdue. And when I was there, a couple key events for me, I was part of something called the Purdue Varsity Glee Club. That was a really important community for me to be a part of early on. And my last year, I was student body president. So I was able to be involved in a variety of interesting and exciting ways. And it really had to say it had a transformational impact on my life would be an understatement. And I would probably get into that a little bit later, but really a pivotal moment in my life. I worked briefly as an engineer for a company called Amoco. They don't even exist anymore. BP bought them. They were Fortune 11 when I worked for them. I worked up in the Chicago area and worked for Amoco as an engineer. But partly because of my experiences as an undergraduate student, I became fascinated by and passionate about organizations that build human potential. So I got very interested in organizational design, organizational theory. So I ended up getting an MBA from Northwestern, and then my PhD is actually in organization theory from the University of Oregon. So much of my career, my academic career, that was kind of my second career after being an engineer for a while. I was a strategy professor for much of my career. But my passion has always been about building institutions that build human potential, and especially academic institutions, again, because of the impact my own academic career had on my life. And so I ended up going into administration and was initially a director of undergraduate programs and associate dean. I was briefly the dean of business at University of Evansville. A bunch of my career was at Butler University, where I served as the business school dean before coming here. And have now been here, 5-6 months. The time goes by fast, but absolutely love it. And what I get excited about is, again, being in organizations that really do create and build human potential, as was the case for me in my own academic experience. And that's what really drives me and gets me excited about what we do.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I was like, oh my gosh, she does have, so you have your undergrad bachelor's, your master's, and a doctoral degree as a first generation student, which is huge.
Yeah, I kind of
So,
made up for the rest of the family, right? So I first
for
one didn't
sure,
agree, but then I just got a bunch of
like
them.
teaching
So
all of them after you as well, what all these degrees are about.
yeah,
So putting yourself back in that 17, 18-year-old self, you said
yeah,
that being involved in high school really helped you even pick what you were interested in studying.
yeah.
But do you remember what were your fears or concerns about going to college as a first generation college student?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Those experiences don't fade quickly, right? Because it's a pretty dramatic experience. And the two big issues were probably financial concerns and then building community. And the financial concerns. My family was always supportive and always wanted to do everything they could. But honestly, I came from a background where no one in my family understood financial aid. Right. So understanding how to navigate, how to apply for a loan, a federal loan, how do you put together all the complicated information you have to put together to get financial aid was a complete mystery to my family. And again, wonderfully supportive family, but there was no way we could financially pull this off without some help. And just trying to figure out what that looked like. I worked part-time much of my way through school because that's how I would pay for it. I actually paid for my last semester on a credit card because somebody was crazy enough to give me credit and it helped me get through. So you do what you have to do, right? But the financial concerns were always there. And I know for a number of our students, that's a constant battle, and I get it and I feel it. I felt it. And it's one of the things that uh, was always there for me getting through school. Now, obviously, once I graduated, that instantly changed for me, which was the value of the degree. And the financial situation immediately got better, but that was a big challenge. The other piece that was a major concern for me is sense of community and belonging. Again, not coming from a background where people were, it was, everybody went to college and everybody knew that, and that was an expectation and experience. I didn't have any of that in my family. So I felt like I was going into a little bit of a unknown. A real turnaround experience for me, and honestly, one of the most important things I've done in my path was my involvement with the Purdue Varsity Glee Club. Who would have guessed that would have been it, right? But it was that instant sense of community and belonging that was really important. And I know this wasn't part of your question, but one of the things that would be such a critical piece of advice for all of our first generation students is whatever that community is for you, find it and be a part of it. And that is such an important part of being successful in a college experience, is finding a community you feel like you're a part of. That was a concern for me. I was very fortunate early on to find it, but that was a big part of my overall experience.
Yeah, and I really like that advice because a lot of times as a first generation college student, I can speak for myself. I'm also first generation
Yeah.
college student. I was just set on my parents worked so hard for me to get here and I'm going to do my best in school. So I didn't even think about getting involved right away. I didn't really think about putting myself out there and finding my community. And I realized very quickly that you feel alone also as a first generation college student. So I'm like, okay, my roommate's my friend, but I need to make friends with my floor, for example, going to the floor programs, or think what are things that are important to me. For me, I community service, which is a huge part of my life, high school,
Yeah.
even now. So I'm like, okay, what are the community service organizations that I can get involved in? It doesn't have to be academic specific, but anything that any organization or any events that you relate to are awesome. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that, for sure.
Yeah.
And you even mentioned with financial strains or even just challenges with having a sense of belonging. So tell me a little bit more about your undergrad experience. You said you worked in undergrad to pay for school, but what are some additional challenges that you faced, and that there were people or resources that helped you get through that as a first generation college student?
Yeah. So it's a great question. One of them obviously was the financial and the community, but the other one that was a challenge for me, and this may come as a surprise to some of our students, but boy, I did not have the study habits that I needed to be a successful college student walking in. And if I'm blunt about it, high school was easy for me. You know, I was sufficiently good at math and science, which is where a lot of people get tripped up, that I kind of walked through high school without too much trouble. Boy, did I get humbled my first semester at Purdue. So,
She's an engineer student.
right. Boy, I got humbled. I was like, whoa, okay, I don't know what I've gotten myself into. And it's interesting. Again, wonderfully supportive family, but that's not a group I could turn to say, help me figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
And so learning good study habits was really key. And ironically, the group that really helped me with that was my social group. This was a big part of the Purdue Varsity Glee Club. Keeping academic integrity of the group was really, really important. I know, for example, our student athletes get a lot of support through the athletics programs. Whatever organization you're connected with, lean on your colleagues to get that support. But I got to tell you, that was the one part where it was a surprise to me. And interestingly, as I got to know more of my colleagues that had, family members that they were like, well, of course it was going to be difficult. We all knew that. I'm like, why? No one told me that. It's all a surprise for me. But it's worth it, right? I mean, you power through and you be successful. But it was humbling early on. And for our students that experience that, that's part of the process. Don't let it scare you. It's just part of being a college student.
Right. And for some people, some study habits really work for them, and for others, they don't. So it's a little bit of a trial and error too.
Right.
I learned early on that I was a morning person, which as a college student, that's probably a shocker to a lot of students. They pull all-nighters, and I just couldn't. I'm like, I'm going to go to bed at 10:30, 11. But I was that first person at Starbucks on Main Street. They knew my order. Unfortunately, they don't work there no more. But I was there like 6:30, 7 a.m. every day, getting my study on. So especially trying the different methods, even in a virtual world, I know it's a little bit different. Being in school, I mean, in a classroom and in person as it is online, but it still holds true. You have to put in that amount of work, and it may even be a little bit more of you learning because it is virtual, and it might be a little bit more intimidating to go to your professor or even schedule like virtual office hours with them too.
Yeah.
So talking a little bit more about, the position that you're in today, do you feel your experience as a first generation college student shaped your career choices and your career experience? And if you have any examples for us to share?
So absolutely. And, the way a good friend of mine, a mentor of mine, he's the CEO of a restaurant chain, and he and I would teach a class together. And one of the things he was always a big fan of is really understand your core self, understand what it is that drives you. The term he uses is your intentionality. What is the thing that really shapes how you think and who you are? And I was a professor for many years, so I can do all kinds of academic references. Got to be a little careful with that. But there's a great book called True North by a guy named Bill George, and he talks about identifying, talking to a bunch of successful executives about what is that thing that your true north, that thing that really drives you. And what he found in his research is, in talking to a multitude of executives, there was usually some pivotal experience in their life that shaped their thinking. And boy, that's very much the case for me. And what it was the transformational experience of my education. And I have a wonderfully supportive family. I can never thank my family enough for all the support they've given. And as a result of my education, I have had experiences, been able to do things, been able to see things, to be able to accomplish things that no one else in my family has been able to do, see, or feel. And I so value that. That was my pivotal moment. And my true north then has been to create institutions that create those opportunities. And that's what has really driven my career throughout. I was good at math and science, ended up being an engineer. I enjoyed that experience, but ultimately I was passionate about getting back into a higher education environment and helping others have that transformational experience. And I enjoyed doing that as a professor. It's one of the most wonderful, noble pursuits in the world. And I don't want to ever underestimate the power of a professor. In fact, I could go back and talk about professors to this day. Vernon Foley, a history professor from Purdue, who actually fundamentally influenced me. And to this day, I still pull from the things I learned from him. But my passion is about building organizations and building institutions. And that's what really caused me, as I got into my academic career, to say, I really want to get on the side of helping build these institutions that build human potential. And it has been the driving force in everything I do. And the beauty of it is once you identify that thing, your true north, work is a passion. And I mean, I keep weird hours, and it's a pretty taxing role. And there's obviously aspects of the job I'm not thrilled about, but most days I absolutely love what I do, because I know in the final analysis, we're building an institution that builds human potential. And that's exciting. And that comes from my first generation college experience, the experience that education had on my life. And that's something I get excited about sharing with others.
Definitely, is because I love that you talked about the transformational moment, because us being first generation college student, we're setting up generations that come after us. Like my sister is 11 years old and she's already like, I can't wait to go to Bradley. My family visited me about 3 weeks ago and I brought them to look at the flags that we had for Hispanic Heritage Month. And my sister's like, oh, is there anything going on? I'm like, oh, fortunately right now there isn't anything, because they would come for every siblings weekend, every family weekend. But for her, it's like, oh, I love, like, I understand college a little bit more. She can even have conversations with her classmates or our cousins. My cousin right now, she's obviously also first generation. She's at her first year at UIC. So I try to call her every other weekend just to make sure she's okay, because in the virtual world, it's really hard to navigate. And she has a different experience than even I did as a private institution. She's at a large public. So, you know, we all have different experiences, but we know we can call each other. This is for all of us, our family, our community.
Absolutely.
And it's like we're uplifting each other with our experience as first generation.
Absolutely. That's great. I'm glad to hear you're doing that stuff, because absolutely we should be supporting each other.
Yes, definitely. Is there any other advice that you have for first generation college students? I know you already mentioned study habits.
Yeah. You know, the one thing I'll throw out is, the importance of perseverance. And it's interesting, if I look back on my own early academic career, I now recognize the transformational impact my education had on me. And I'm so incredibly thankful for those that were there to support me, to help me get through. I almost shiver at the idea of how many times I came close to not being able to finish, either for academic or financial reasons. And it was tough. I mean, there were times where I was just like, I don't know how I'm going to get this done. I don't know how I'm going to get through. And somehow I did, knock on wood. Thankfully, it all worked out okay, right? And I couldn't be happier with how my life has evolved. But just know, in those moments when you hit that barrier where you're like, I don't know how I'm going to pull this off, you're not the first person to go through this. And you have mentors, you have friends, you have colleagues that can be there for you to help you get through. And it's worth it. It's worth the effort. It will have, if it's anything like the experience I went through, it will have a transformational impact on your life. But you'll have the challenges. I mean, maybe you won't. Maybe you'll get lucky. Maybe something about your experience will be different than mine. But I had those challenges, and it's a natural evolution of the process. And just would encourage you to persevere. Reach out to your colleagues. Reach out to the support system, because it matters, and it can be a transformational experience. And just know that we're here to help make that happen.
Exactly, because as first generation college students, like I mentioned, we oftentimes feel alone, and we kind of hold on to our struggles when maybe there could be someone out there that knows, maybe they can't specifically help us with the issue at hand, but they know someone that can help us, whether it's a different office on campus or a different person in the community. So that's a great advice, and like huge for all students to know that if you're struggling, like, let us know, and we'll try our best to help you navigate through that, whether it's financial, academics, even social.
Well, and not everybody's, not very few people are going to aspire to be a university president, but you can do that, right? So as a first generation college student, and there's power in knowing that. And I love the idea that we have a day dedicated to identifying and celebrating first generation college students, because I continue to be amazed at how many people who are having wildly successful, wonderful lives themselves were first generation college students. So it's worth it. It's worth the trouble. And know that we're here to help.
Thank you so much for being here today with me and all of you that are watching. Stay tuned for future first generation college days programs. Many offices across campus are specifically reaching out to first generation college students. Our office, the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, holds programs throughout the semester, so keep on a lookout for that on our website and through social media. Thank you again for being here with me today, and bye.